One question we get asked quite a lot is what happens when we can't travel anymore? And that might be due to a health issue, mobility issue, or something else. And it's a good question. But we've also seen how that kind of question, if we're not careful, can keep us from saying yes to the life we want right now.
So in this episode, we're sharing how we're thinking about what comes next and how we're still choosing to live life fully today.
I'm Judy.
And I'm Kevin. Welcome back to Finding Gina Marie, where we share our lives as full-time travelers and the connections we make along the way.
For the most part, when we're referring to what if we can't travel anymore, I don't think we see it as it being one specific moment. I think it's going to be more of a gradual shift. Right now, we're mixing between traveling fast and slow, and I think at some point it might be logical for us to slow down a bit.
Yeah, it's not going to be just one and done. It's not a thing that happens. It's us deciding we have to adjust.
But at the same time, it still begs the question, what happens when we can no longer be traveling?
Right now, we feel really good about travel. We feel healthy, we feel strong about it, but it's a topic that you don't get to decide about. Sometimes your health changes. Sometimes something happens to you and makes your mobility less than it is today. And we understand that, which is one of the reasons why we started traveling when we did. We wanted to make sure that while we're in good health, we can get out there and do the most travel that we possibly can.
We know that for a lot of people, just talking about aging and losing your mobility or those kinds of issues can be really uncomfortable. But I think that we both felt like it was really important in a lot of the topics that we talk about where we're facing fears so we don't live a life of regrets.
So let's dive into the common fears. But just so you know, we're documenting all these fears and we're talking about them, but we don't let them run our lives.
So one of the most popular questions people ask us is, what if you give up your home base and then you're priced out of the market? We know without a doubt that we wouldn't be able to travel the way we are or live the life that we're living if we had a home base. We also would be worrying about keeping up with it and all of the maintenance, and that's just not how we want to live right now. And we're also, and you'll be hearing this over and over again throughout this video, is the people that we are today are not going to be the people we are in 20 years, which is, I think, hopefully how long we have to travel, or longer.
And I think that one of the things we decided a while back was we don't want to invest in homes or anything else in the future. We want to give ourselves enough flexibility to make a change if we need to. It's not about finding stability. It's about finding happiness in the life we're living.
And we really don't want to be tied down to some place that no longer serves us or that we can't get out of a market because housing prices are down or something like that. So by being very flexible and just renting, we think that that gives us the most choices that we have, and we're all about having a lot of choice in our lives.
Another question we get asked is, what if we run out of energy? If you're traveling fast, it certainly can wear you down. We try to travel slowly, but in the future, if we need to travel even more slowly, that's fine. If we need to spend 6 months in a place, that would be okay. We don't know what we're going to feel like in the future, and we're okay adapting to what we need to. So if we're a little tired, we'll adjust.
We have met people on our travels, and there are many of you in the comments who are in your 70s and 80s and are continuing to travel on your own terms. And that's inspirational to us.
Recently, we've seen some that have more energy than us.
So what if one of us gets sick and the other one has to become a caregiver? Well, at least in the situation with Kevin and I, Kevin is probably a better nurturing person than I am. So I know with confidence that he would be able to take care of me. And I definitely think that I would also be able to take care of him. But we're also looking to the communities that we're living in to also provide support to us. We know that there are a lot of people who have no living relatives to help care for them, or they are living alone, and they make it work every single day.
I think it's good to have contingency plans, but I don't think it's something to worry about. What if one of us gets sick? We're going to have to deal with that in the moment, and we don't know who will be or where we are in our life at that point. So for today, we're putting a pin in that one.
And we also don't know what kind of sickness it would look like. It could be something very debilitating. It could be something that's very long and drawn out. like everything, we'll deal with it when it comes up.
We get this question a lot. Could you see yourselves living in the US again? And as a long-term solution, like we're traveling and we're going to end up back in the US, no, that's not our plan. But if someone needs us, if an elderly relative or one of our kids needs us and we need to be back in the US for them, yes, we definitely would go back for that reason. But no, we're not planning to make it a long-term solution for our lives.
And to that same point, would we get Medicare when we hit 65? We're not of that age yet. We know that there are penalties if you don't get it when you're eligible. So because there is some remote possibility that we could end up living in the United States, we would probably plan to be buying Medicare when we're originally eligible. Whether we'll continue to do that for the rest of our lives, that's something that we need to discuss, and we'll take it year by year.
Do we have long-term insurance, a backup plan, an emergency fund? Well, we've always planned to save as much money as we can that we've set aside for the future. We're trying not to dig into that. Part of that is building multiple streams of income through YouTube and other projects we have going on so that we can have that money in reserve.
Yes, we're not planning to spend every dime without holding something in case of a problem. So we're kind of doing checkups to make sure that we're comfortable with what our spending is. But at the same time, that's just one piece of the plan.
Yeah, we're not planning to leave a big inheritance to our children. Their inheritance will be, look at all the memories we've made for you. Enjoy.
So what happens if one of us should pass away first? Well, that's something that we've talked about a lot over the years. We've been together since I was 14 and Kevin was 16. We've been married over 41 years. It's something that we talk about.
It's actually something we argue about, saying you better not go first because I'm going to be screwed if you do.
But we had a conversation about that just recently. And I think that we would probably spend, the remaining spouse would probably spend a little bit of time with our children to kind of help them deal with the loss of their other parent. But then we would probably be back in Italy, which is kind of a safe place. And we've had a ton of happy memories there. We would probably take 6 months or so just to maybe grieve, but also just to not have to make a whole lot of decisions. But then I think we both hope that the other person would continue to travel and just like be doing this on behalf of the other spouse.
Now, again, that goes back to mobility, all the other topics we've been talking about. But yes, we would like to be continuing the legacy of full-time travel or some sort of travel in honor of the life that we have built. And it's just a beautiful life. So we want to continue that.
Right. So let's transition and talk a little bit about how we're thinking about all of this. And most of all, whether we're being irresponsible. And I'd like to just point out that if we were still back in the US, working full time and living our lives, we would not be making end of life plans for ourselves. We would just try to be living life to the fullest. And that probably wouldn't include making contingency plans for dying. So it doesn't really make sense for us as full-time travelers to kind of put the weight of all of that into our lives.
You know, what changes because we're full-time travelers? Yes, there may seem to be less stability. You know, full-time job. Well, people are getting laid off all the time. Companies change their ideas all the time about who needs to be there. So forget the stability part. And now what we're doing is we're living this life thinking that we have all these options. We can do whatever we want to do. It's not irresponsible to give yourself choice and direction that you could go 5 different ways. I think that's actually more responsible because now we're not stuck going just one path.
For as much as I enjoy travel planning, that is spending time figuring out how we want to live. I don't want to put that much energy into preparing for the day when I'm going to die.
We really have so much to be present for, and we've talked about this. We like to be in the moment. We like to make sure that we're getting the most out of where we are and not squandering that time worrying about the future.
Yeah, there's the quote, worry is the thief of joy. And there are certain things you can take preparations for. But for the most part, worry is not preparation in itself. We've had so many times in life where trusting the universe has actually opened unexpected doors for us. Way back in 1985, when we'd only been in Texas for 3 months, Kevin was working at a computer store that was literally closing its doors that day. A customer walked in looking for new equipment, and Kevin ended up giving him a thoughtful, honest recommendation, and it wasn't a sales pitch in any way. They exchanged cards, and a month later, that customer offered him a job, and they ended up starting a business together.
And then there was a time that Apple reached out. I was 52, an age when most people don't expect a big tech company to come calling. But that offer came right as one of my businesses was struggling. It gave us a fresh start that we didn't even know we were looking for.
So instead of locking in a plan we might outgrow, we're staying open because we've seen how the right thing can find us when we're not even looking for it.
Control is kind of a fantasy. We think we have more control over things in life than we really do. It's that idea of, if I do this, this, and this, all this will happen, which isn't a guarantee no matter how well prepared you are, no matter how many spreadsheets you put together, no matter how many things you set aside for the future. Things change in the most unexpected ways. And we're not going to sit around worrying about what's going to change. We'll take control of the moment, which we can do. Are we behaving properly right now for the time we have? Are we looking around us and appreciating what we have? That's what we have control over in the moment.
And neither of us is really particularly worried about being sick or dying. And I think that that's also a huge relief. We're trusting that we'll be able to embrace those things when we're confronted with them. Maybe we'll feel differently at the time, but we're willing to hedge our bets on that one.
Yeah, and if we feel differently then, that's the point, right? We've lived our lives up until that point, and now we have to deal with the problem. Great. The problem may be there in the future. I'm not going to worry about it today.
And one of the things that full-time travel has taught us is to be flexible. Yeah. And so when the time comes and we need some flexibility, we have built up that skill over the years that we've been living this lifestyle.
Yeah, fair point. We are learning to be flexible.
In a nutshell, I really don't think that there's a perfect plan that needs to apply to us. We're willing to just shoot from the hip and be resilient and make the best choices when they come up. We don't want to use all of our time and energy now to be preparing for a future that may not even happen for us.
So what are we looking for in a home base? That doesn't mean we're going to pick just one home base. Maybe we're going to have a home base that's in 2 places that are warm certain parts of the year. And maybe these home bases will adjust. Maybe we'll pick one city for a certain period of time, another city for another period of time. But there are certain characteristics that we're looking for that have tied into our travel planning today.
Part of the whole point of full-time travel is that it allows us to see places, and we could envision whether we could see ourselves living there when we can't travel full-time anymore. Now, of course, I've talked multiple times about the fact that I'm working on dual citizenship with Italy. So that would for sure be one place that we would strongly be looking at. But we might also want someplace in Southeast Asia, perhaps, where it's warm for part of the year when Italy is cold.
And remember, because you have citizenship in Italy, that opens the door to staying longer in another country in Europe. So maybe we find in the future, hey, there's this wonderful country. We didn't get to spend enough time there because of Schengen. Now we can.
Of course, it depends on what our mobility is and everything else. But if we couldn't travel, we may still be able to take 1 or 2 trips a year. And that might be how it would look for us. We would prioritize someplace that's walkable and also someplace that has good health care. Those are priorities for us. We also want someplace that's affordable.
And part of this travel lifestyle has taught us that we really engage with the beauty around us, whether it's architecture or the people or just the environment that we're in. That energizes us and makes us really happy. So we'd love to include that in our future home base.
If you listen to the intro of all of our videos, we say we're full-time travelers making connections along the way. So even when we are not able to travel full-time, making connections will still be very important to us. Community is something that is going to be very high on our list of places that we're looking for when we have to slow down.
And we have a wonderful travel community. You can join it, findingginareed.com. Take a look at it.
La Familia.
So you made it to this point in the video. We would like to know, has this affected your opinion about your future? How has this changed your attitude towards what you could do in your life?
We know that our ideas might be unconventional and really uncomfortable for many of you. If this is not something that you could ever imagine doing for yourselves, we'd love to hear about that. But we'd also love to hear if any of our ideas resonate for you, or hopefully help you think a little bit differently on this topic than maybe before you watched this video.
If this is your first time watching us, thank you very much. Please subscribe if you can, and remember to wander more,
worry less,
and bring a passport.
Until next time.
Until next time.